welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. The film that I will be discussing is Orange County. Orange County is a 2002 comedy film. It is directed by Jake Kasdan, who has directed films such as Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, and Bad Teacher. The film is written by Mike White, who is known for The White Lotus, and he also co stars in the film. The film stars Colin Hanks, Jack Black, and Schuyler Fisk. Here is the synopsis. A smart high school student with his heart set on going to Stanford is horrified when his guidance counselor accidentally sends a wrong transcript with his college application. He spends the rest of the film trying to prove that he's actually a good student with a terrific grade point average. The film was released in theaters on January 11th, 2002. It had a reported budget of $18 million. Dollars. In terms of box office, it made over $43.3 million worldwide. It opened at number 3 domestically with over $15 million. It was beaten by The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, and A Beautiful Mind. In terms of critical reception, it has a 3.0 rating on Letterboxd. It was nominated a Teen Choice Award for Film Choice Movie Comedy. And at the time of this recording, it is available on demand, so check your local provider. Okay, let's get into first discoveries. I don't remember seeing any promos for this at the time. Maybe I did, but I remember it was either I first saw it, either I rented it through the public library or I saw it on TV, one or the other. But I do recall enjoying the movie at the time. I thought it was a fun teen comedy movie that was not too raunchy in regards to teen comedy movies at the time. And I really enjoyed Jack Black in the movie where he played the stoner type character. I thought he was fun to watch. But rewatching this movie now, I find it still holds up as a teen comedy film. And it just made me miss MTV because if you note during the credits, it is co produced by MTV Films. And this was at a time when MTV was all about music and also to movies where they produced their own movies under Paramount. So yeah, it just made me miss that about MTV. Just it's a shame what happened to MTV. But anyways, as for the movie itself, I would say it's enjoyable. I don't know if it's anything new in regards to teen comedy movies, but I would say it's worthwhile, and I appreciate that it's not too raunchy. So let's get into the highlights. I this film there's quite a bit of absurdity. So it reminded me like when I studied theater at the time at Ottawa U. One of the formats that I've learned was theater of the absurd, where essentially there's a lot of you could say craziness happening and all that stuff. And I find with this movie, it kind of reminded me of that, but even though it doesn't go to the extreme. From Sean's perspective, our lead character, he finds a lot of the people outside of his girlfriend Ashley to be quite out there. Like for instance, with Lance, played by Jack Black, he's really all about getting high. We often see him wearing nothing but his underwear or like the socks, and he's kind of like lounging around while having a good time on drugs. And Sean's friends Arlo and Chad, you could say they're quite the airheads, and they're also all about surfing essentially. And then of course we have Sean's English teacher, Mr. Burke, played by Mike White. Even though he teaches English, he doesn't really know much about the subject matter as a teacher, which makes you quite concerned on how is he a teacher in the first place. But anyways, those are just examples of the absurdity that Sean has to deal with. And also to one of absurdities, I would say, is with Miss Cobb, played by Lily Tomlin, who's the high school guidance counselor. She messes up Sean's transcript, which leads him to go through this series of unfortunate events. But essentially, when she realizes that she made a mistake after, he told her what happened, she kind of acts quite nonchalant, I would say, with her response, which leads them to kind of had their brief back and forth inside the office. But yeah, even I would say the absurdity doesn't go to the extreme to make it like quite out there. But yeah, I would say like in terms of what Sean has to deal with is interesting. And as a writer myself, it's always nice to see movies tackling writing and all that stuff. And I would say in this case, it's really all about Sean pursuing his dreams to be a writer, which started like after this was after when his friend Lonnie died. He was essentially lost, and he stumbled upon Marcus Skinner's book Straight Jacket that was buried at the beach, and that led him to his path to becoming a writer. And essentially, like he believes that applying to Stanford, so he wants to go to Stanford because Marcus Skinner is a teacher there, but also too he wants to essentially escape town because he finds there's a lot of wackiness involved in different ways. But I guess he realizes towards the end during his conversation with Marcus that every writer has like some sort of conflict with the place that they grew up in, and Sean realizes that growing up in Orange County and being around with the people there, realizes that it kind of is a part of his identity, and also too becomes a part of his writing. And as a result, he changes his mind and stays at Orange County. So good for Sean there. And it shows that you don't have to move to a big city to pursue your dreams. At least, well, depending on the career. But as a writer, I would say it doesn't matter if you go to the big city or you stay, in a small city. You'll be able to achieve your dreams anywhere, essentially. And speaking of Orange County, it's always nice to see a film or a TV show that's take place in Orange County that's not the OC. Because I remember, yeah, the OC at the time, that was a big show. Used to watch that a lot on CTV. And it's interesting here with Orange County is more on a comedic like, while with the OC, it's a bit more, I would say, dramatic. Even though it has its funny moments, but I would say it's a bit more dramatic. It's been a while since I've seen that show. But also to note that apparently the theme song that was used in the OC was first used in this movie. So California by Phantom Planet, it was first in this movie. I don't know if it was like the first thing prior to the OC. It's in the soundtrack, and I believe it's played during the end credits. So there's that. And speaking of soundtrack, I would say the soundtrack is quite decent. I would say one of the highlights for me is Butterfly by Crazy Town. Because, yeah, I remember, yeah, listening to a lot of Top 40 at the time, listening to the radio with Cool FM and all those music countdowns with that song always played like on rotation at the time. And in this movie, it's played when Tanya and her cheerleaders are performing the song, but then also too when Sean is at Stanford when he meets Gretchen, finds that she and her friends are dancing to that song, which reminds him of back home. Which you could argue is partly why he changes his mind about going to Stanford, because I guess aspects of Orange County was reminded him when he saw Gretchen and her friends do that dance. But Yeah, there's that. And also too, even though the movie is all about Sean, at least we get to see moments with the supporting characters and how they're dealing with their own baggage. So for example, with Sean's mom Cindy, played by Catherine O'Hara, she essentially is miserable because she has to take care of her way older husband Bob while dealing with Lance and with Sean, of course. And then we have Sean's dad, Bud, played by John Lithgow. He has to deal with his younger wife, Krista, played by Leslie Mann, who's having an affair with the gardener, I believe. And then while trying to raise his younger son, Jake, who essentially loves his pacifier, or as Jake calls it, his pootie. And it's interesting that with Cindy and Bud, even though they're with different people, they managed to get back together all because of Sean, indirectly, I suppose. But yeah, interesting. And also too, the one-liners in this movie are quite hilarious. So, for example, with Mr. Burke, he tells Sean in the classroom that essentially he read the story. He said, "Oh, you use a lot of big words. It was a little long, so I didn't read the whole thing. But who cares? Because I gave you an A." I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, it's concerning as a teacher to say that, but it's hilarious. And then also too with Bud, like when Sean tells him he wants to be a writer and all that stuff, Bud's like, a writer? What do you have to write about? You're not gay. You're not oppressed or gay. Oh my goodness. I mean, that's a little mean, but quite I would say hilarious. And then lastly, with Lance, when he is at Stanford and stumbles across the secretary Mona, he tells her, "Oh, do you want me to get naked and start the revolution?" It's hilarious, hilarious. And then lastly, the cameos. I enjoyed the cameos in the movie. The ones that I want to highlight specifically, Ben Stiller when he played the fireman when Stanford is on fire. I thought he was hilarious playing the straight man in that movie. Harold Ramis, where he played the director of Stanford admissions. He had the interesting bit where he took MDMA thinking it was pain relievers. So funny. And then, of course, Gary Marshall when he played Tanya's grandfather, Arthur. Oh boy, like he essentially wanted to get out of that house when he finds people, when he finds the family are quite out there. And he tells Sean, you'll never get into Stanford. Hilarious. Let's get into Lois. I don't really have too much to add because I find the movie was okay itself. I do want to note that with the promos, a lot of the marketing, it showed Jack Black. You think that he was like the co-lead of this movie, but is he really though? Because with his character is more of a supporting character, and if he's meant to have a more substantial part, I think like his character could have had more to do instead of being one note. Even though the movie is all about Sean, I think there could have had more stuff for Lance to do in this movie outside of being addicted to drugs. But yeah, also too like they could have, questioned what goals does Lance want, or does he just want to stay home, be high all the time? Or maybe it's like, with a lot of these types of movies, they just want to have like you'll have like the straight character, but then you also have to like the wacky character that's just doing wacky stuff. Maybe that's the purpose of his character, but I think there was potential for him to do more, especially since he's, being promoted as the co-lead of the movie based off the marketing. All right, let's get into the trivia. So not a lot that I found here, but I saw that apparently Jack Black, I don't know if this is still accurate, but apparently he was next door neighbors to Mike White, who is the screenwriter of the movie, but also to plays Sean's teacher. So apparently, his part in the movie was specifically written for him, and apparently there was not much improv in this movie. So I found that's fascinating because usually with comedies, there's a lot of improv with that, but it seems like in this case that didn't happen. And apparently, when Lance jumps into the pool to save Sean, he takes off the socks. And apparently, that was not in the script, but it was an idea of Jack Black's wardrobe assistant. So Jack Black found it hilarious, and the gag remained in the film. Interesting. But I mean, like, if people don't want to, wear wet socks, so yeah, there's a point there. And lastly, like in the scene where the dog bites Schuler Fisk's face, apparently the dog really did bit her nose. Her reaction in the scene were kept in the movie. She wasn't upset and said the dog Andy had been having long days and was being picked up all day long, so she understood. I thought that dog was cute, and it's interesting that that actually happened in the scene. So hey, it happens. All right. So, should this movie be rediscovered? I say absolutely yes, because it's a fun teen comedy movie. If you love movies from the 2000s, I would say you'll dig this one. I don't know if it's I would put it up there in regards to teen movies from this decade, but I would say it's enjoyable. It has fun moments to enjoy, and I would say at least as a teen comedy movie, it wasn't too raunchy, which I appreciate because usually with movies with that they tend to go over the top of that stuff. So there's that. So that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. You can find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Nomfanelo. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. Visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod, where you can support the podcast via donation and look at posts that are exclusive on that platform. You could join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is our community group on our official Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where you can interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. On Spotify, you can answer the feature poll, leave a comment, and rate the podcast. You can leave a review and rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser. And submit questions, comments, or suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form on our link tree to be featured on a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. All right. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.